What's up everyone, how are you all? Today we are back with another blazing Naruto story. What if Naruto had enough of Kakashi Harem? If you enjoy then please like, share and do comments, so let's start the story. Kakashi gazed dispassionately down at the little brats he'd been given, not saying a word. When they started showing signs of discomfort and impatience, he smiled at them and clapped his hands together. Introductions. Pinky, you go first. Name, likes, dislikes, hobbies and dreams or goals for the future. The little kunoichi looked up at him with wide eyes, before glancing at the two boys that made up the rest of her team. My name is Haruno Sakura. I like, cute giggles and blushing, with sidelong glances at the scowling Uchiha. Kakashi sighed to himself. Great. He had a fangirl as well as the object of her obsession. I dislike no pig. This was said with a surprising vehemence. My hobbies are reading and another giggle fit. Oh wow. She counted stalking as a hobby. And my dream for the future is more sideways looks and blushing. The girl's file said she had shinobi parents, but right now she was acting more like a civilian-born wannabe kunoichi. Well, that was informative, Kakashi drawled. He reveled in the dark flush that covered the girl's face, a mix of offended feminine fury and embarrassment. You're up next, duckling. The last, loyal, Uchiha scowled even more heavily, much to Kakashi's amusement. The boy really needed to relax. Maybe a good dose of Icha would loosen him up. My name is Uchiha Sasuke. My likes are few and my dislikes are many. This said with a pointed glance in the direction of his female teammate, which she blithely ignored. I have no hobbies, I train so that I can reach my goal, my ambition, to kill a certain man, and revive my clan. The three males determinedly ignored the squeals of hero worship and ecstasy that erupted from the pink-haired girl. Kakashi stared thoughtfully, and not without worry, at the young Avenger. The darkness and anger that the young boy was emanating was very troubling. But that would have to wait until later. They still had to pass his test. Alright then, that just leaves you, Sunshine. The blonde boy who looked painfully like his dearly departed sensei grinned widely. I'm Uzumaki Naruto, Datbeo. I like ramen, especially from Ichiraku. I like spending time with my Nichans and the Gakis and all the others. I dislike waiting for my ramen to cook, and Gigi's secretary and people who disrespect me and my Nichans. My hobbies are training, pranking and, A light blush darkened his cheeks, causing Kakashi's curiosity to skyrocket. Something to look into? Well, I have a lot of hobbies. My three goals, TTEBEO, are to repay the Nichans for everything they've done for me, make sure my Gakis all grow up and have good lives, and to become a great ninja so I can become Hokage. The last was said in a determined shout. Sasuke scoffed and Sakura growled, but all Kakashi could think of was a certain red-haired woman ranting about how if she couldn't be Hokage, she was damn well going to marry the next one, Databane. The boy may look like his father, but his personality was all Uzumaki. What about you, sensei? Huh? Oh right. He smiled down at the spiky blonde head. Since you asked so nicely, my name is Hitaki Kakashi. My likes, he held up the infamous orange book, are not for the ears of children, nor are my dislikes. Hobbies, I have a lot of those. My dreams, are none of your business. Kakashi smirked at Sasuke's face fault and Sakura's indignant shriek of, we only get his name? However, he was unprepared for Naruto's finger pointed accusingly at his face. Pervert. Those are hentai books. Ignoring the shocked and blushing faces of the other two pre-genin and the slight surprise, alright. Maybe a little pride. He felt knowing that Naruto knew what Icha was. Kakashi raised a single eyebrow at his sensei's son. And how, Naruto-kun, he drawled lazily, do you know that? An evil chuckle reverberated around his brain as he heard Sakura's enraged shouting, Naruto baka. The Jinchuriki's cheeks turned red at the insinuation. I haven't read them, hentai-sensei. Megumi Ne told me what they are, and who wrote them. Perverted old man. Naruto scowled comically, eyes squinting and cheeks puffing up. Kakashi laughed gently. Jiraiya tended to leave that impression on women. It seemed little Naruto was protective of his Nichan's honor, whoever they were. How cute, and just as fiery as Kushina Ne. As much as I enjoy it, enough hentai talk. The little genin were blushing. The joys of being a preteen. I expect the three of you to be at Training Ground 3 at exactly 7 am tomorrow morning for your final test. Wait for it. What? But sensei. Did you have a question? He smirked to himself. Being Guy's eternal rival was good for one thing at least. Sensei, Sakura spoke up. Didn't we already pass the Genin test? Actually, all the Jonin sensei give their team one last test, to see if they have what it takes to be a shinobi of Konoha. If you pass, you become official Konoha Genin. If you fail, he smiled cheerily at them. It's back to the academy for another year. The expressions on their faces warmed his heart. This was the reason he didn't make more of a fuss when Sarutobi-sama forced him to take another team. And hey, he didn't even mind that he'd, practically, been ordered to actually pass this team. They promised much future amusement for him. Kakashi watched the determination settle on three little faces and had to suppress a smile. No, he did not mind at all. Sasuke fought a snarl as he found himself buried up to the neck in dirt. The Hitaki bastard just stood there, not even looking at him, reading his, if the dobi was correct, hentai. He had been so close. He knew that he'd felt his fingertip graze one of the bells. He tried, futilely, to wiggle his way up out of the ground, feeling completely humiliated as he did so. He was sure that he looked an absolute fool. If the dobi saw him like this. Sasuke heard Sakura's distressed, "Sasuke-kun." At the exact moment the alarm clock went off. He growled under his breath. Great. Having one of his fangirls help him was even more humiliating. He'd rather have the dobi. Kakashi smirked under his mask at the downtrodden genin hopefuls. Sasuke was sitting cross-legged in front of the posts, determinedly not looking at anybody and ignoring the fact that he was covered in dirt. Naruto was sprawled on his back, jumpsuit gone, hanging out to dry in a nearby tree, surprisingly relaxed in his boxers and singlet. Sakura? Kakashi let his smirk widen. Sakura was tied to a post in between the boys, and not looking very happy about it either. Looks like Sakura-chan isn't getting any lunch today, he announced sunnily. Does anybody know why that is? The three genin shook their heads. Because Sakura-chan was the furthest away from passing, of course. Her face fell. Of course, he felt no pity for her, seeing as she fainted from a weak, genin-level genjutsu featuring an injured Sasuke. Rin, even when she'd been more obvious about her attraction to him, had always put being a kunoichi and a medic first. The usual pang of loss and grief and guilt assaulted his heart at the thought of Rin. Kind, sweet Rin, Kakashi-sensei? Naruto's voice broke his thoughts. What about me and Teme? How close were we? Sasuke's head shot up and he stared intently at the Jonin. Well, the both of you managed to touch one of the bells, but I'd say Naruto was the closest to passing. The Jinchuriki beamed up at him and the Uchiha glared. Really, sensei? Kakashi smiled, his one eye slipping shut to block out the painful image of Minato-sensei and Kushina-ne superimposed over their son's face. Really, Naruto-kun? Woo, I'm awesome datbayo. He gazed fondly at the exuberant Uzumaki. Kakashi hated to burst his bubble, but, you were the closest to passing, but none of you actually passed, Naruto-kun. Naruto's face fell, and Kakashi almost felt sorry for him. Almost, but, Kakashi suppressed a cackle at the hopeful puppy looks the genin were sending him. Since two of you worked so hard to get the bells, I'm going to give you all another shot after lunch. Try to figure out why Naruto was the closest, and don't give Sakura-chan any food. He smiled at them and disappeared in a burst of chakra smoke. His dramatic exits were so much better than Guy's dynamic entries. When they were actual entries, that is. The taijutsu move was, admittedly, pretty cool. Kakashi quickly perched himself in a nearby tree and cloaked his presence as well as he could. Probably overkill, but better safe than sorry. He settled in to watch his genin, hoping against hope that they would understand the point of the exercise. Kakashi might have been ordered to pass this cell, but by Kami they were going to earn it. Sakura shifted uncomfortably against the post she was tied to. It wasn't fair. Kakashi-sensei had used her eternal undying love for Sasuke-kun against her. Clearly the one-eyed Jonin was single, because he just didn't understand how traumatizing it was to see the love of your life in such a state. How was she supposed to concentrate on passing a silly test when Sasuke-kun was hurt like that? True love will conquer all. Inner Sakura declared. We're gonna figure out how Naruto Baka beat Sasuke-kun and then we'll get the bells and then Sasuke-kun will fall in love with us and we'll live happily ever after. Shanaru. Sakura yelled, oblivious to the fact that she'd done so out loud, and was currently straining at the ropes binding her in her efforts to raise her fists triumphantly. In her state, Sakura also missed the wary looks her male teammates were sending her. So, Naruto, Sakura said, going back to her normal sweet self. What exactly did you do when you attacked Kakashi-sensei? We need to find out what you did to get so close to passing. Naruto frowned thoughtfully. Well, I made a whole bunch of Kage Bunshin to distract him, and teamed up with more of my Kage Bunshin to grab the bells, but that pervert is really good. He took all of us out really easily. Sakura sighed. So much for that. Naruto baka, of course it was easy, Bunshin are just illusions. No matter how many you made, they wouldn't be able to actually touch him anyway. The blonde scowled at her. I'm not stupid. I do know what Bunshin are, you know. I can't make any of the fucking things. I said Kage Bunshin. They're solid. I've never heard of solid clones that aren't elemental. Sasuke-kun said with a faint scowl. Kage Bunshin no jutsu. Another Naruto popped into being and promptly brought its fist down on Sasuke's head before dispelling with a snicker. Naruto ooh. Sakura roared in a rage. Don't hit Sasuke-kun. Wait. Sakura trailed off. You hit Sasuke-kun. I think we got that, funnily enough. Naruto said sarcastically. Even Sasuke was looking at her with a raised brow. Kya. So C-U-U-U-U-T-E. No, I mean you were right. Your Bunshin are solid. Okay, so Naruto had solid clones to help him out. That's related to why he came the closest to passing, I'm sure of it. Sakura sat tied to her post, muttering to herself, while the boys traded glances, clearly questioning the sanity of their female teammate. Why may and cuz I had other people to work with and you two had to do it on your own? Naruto's question broke into Sakura's feverish muttering and her head shot up. That's it, you worked in a team. Naruto was the closest because he had teammates to help him, even if they were actually still him. Genin cells are always made up of 3 people plus their Jonin sensei. He's trying to see if we can work together, the number of bells don't matter. Either we all pass or we all fail. Sakura proudly beamed up at the 2 boys, who were looking pretty impressed. Well, Naruto did, but at least Sasuke-kun acknowledged her. Kaya, he would fall for her in no time. So we all need to work together to try and get the bells. Are you sure he's not going to send one of us back to the academy? Naruto asked. I'm sure, Sakura said confidently. And if I'm wrong, Okami please don't be wrong. Then you too can have the bells. She nearly screamed at the thought of giving up her place at Sasuke-kun's side to the blonde prankster, but it would only be fair if it turned out she'd given them false information. Are you sure? Naruto was watching her closely. Sakura smiled as best she could. Positive. Well, alright then, if we're all gonna attack him together, you're gonna need all your strength. And with that, Naruto cheerfully sliced the ropes holding her with a kunai, and handed her his bento. Wha? Sakura gaped at him. But sensei told you not to give me any food. And aren't you hungry anyway? Right on cue, Naruto's stomach growled. Sasuke-kun sighed. If I need you two to pass this test, I guess the Dobi can have my lunch, and you can have his. You definitely need it more than we do. Sakura gazed at Sasuke in awe. He was so smart and amazing. Ah, thanks Teme, but I can go hungry much longer than you two can. I don't like it, but I can go without food for a while longer. Give your bento to Sakura, and you can have mine. The blonde boy smiled. Though her stomach was screaming at her not to do it, Sakura handed Naruto back his bento. No, it's alright Naruto. You and Sasuke-kun are the heavy hitters in this team anyway, you need the energy more than I do. Besides, she smiled weakly. I'm on a diet. Kakashi smiled to himself as he watched his students from his spot in the tree. They definitely caught on quicker than he expected. And it looked like he didn't even need to give them the belt test again either. They were already trying to help each other to work as a team. Time for his own dynamic entry. With a small burst of chakra and the accompanying smoke, Kakashi appeared in front of the 3 genin, receiving shocked, shifty looks. You 3, he drew himself up to his full height and loomed over them, glaring with his one visible eye. Pass, he smiled cheerfully. Kakashi savored the incomprehension that covered the kids' faces. He really did love messing with people. What? Naruto was screaming. How? Why? Sakura and Sasuke were also staring, prompting him to answer the blonde's questions. Sakura-chan was right. The purpose of this exercise was to see if you three could work together as a team, and you proved that you have the potential when you all tried to look out for each other by sacrificing your own chance for lunch. In Konoha, teamwork is a very important aspect of shinobi life. Remember, those who abandon the rules are trash, but those who abandon their comrades are worse than trash. A lesson that he learned far too late, and at too great a price. Still, seeing Naruto and Sakura nod determinedly and Sasuke thoughtfully, Kakashi couldn't dwell on bad memories. His little genin were just so cute. The morning after Team 7 officially became Team 7, Sakura was the first one waiting at the bridge Kakashi-sensei had told them to meet at. She was nearly giddy with excitement. She was on a team with Sasuke-kun. Take that Ino pig. Sakura would definitely win Sasuke-kun's heart now. When Sasuke himself showed up a few minutes later, Sakura nearly keeled over. He looked so good, so strong and cool. He just made everything seem so effortless. She spent the next 10 minutes trying to make conversation and swooning over every "hn" Sasuke uttered. When Naruto showed up, Sakura nearly keeled over again, this time from shock. It was gone. That ugly orange eyesore of a jumpsuit was gone. Instead, the blonde was wearing black shinobi pants taped at the ankles and a zippered black armored vest that bore resemblance to the typical shinobi flak jackets. An orange hood was poking out at the back. An orange strip was emerging from below his vest that Sakura assumed was a shirt or singlet of some sort, and orange bands were wrapped around his wrists. He actually looked pretty good. And wasn't that a shocking thought? Naruto, what are you wearing? Sakura demanded once he was in hearing range. Even Sasuke-kun looked interested. He grinned sheepishly and rubbed a hand through his wild hair. Do y'all like it? I promised my Nichans ages ago that once I made genin, I would let them buy me new clothes. They did pretty good, huh? I'll say, Sakura agreed. But you just couldn't let the orange go, could you? Hey, Naruto pouted indignantly. Orange is an awesome color. Orange is not a suitable shinobi color, Dobi. Sasuke broke in. Naruto scowled. If I can hide from the Academy Chunin in my jumpsuit, I can wear this, Teme. Don't insult Sasuke-kun. Sakura's fist came down on the blonde head. Ow, Naruto whined, clutching at his head. That was mean, Sakura-chan. She scowled and hit him again. Don't act so familiarly. But we're a team now. And I'm gonna call you Sakura-chan. Naruto said stubbornly, with that familiar bull-headed look on his face that he got whenever Iruka-sensei told him off for his pranks. At that point, Sakura knew she wouldn't get anywhere, so she just sighed resignedly and leaned back against the railing. Do you think Kakashi-sensei will be as late as he was the last 2 days? Sakura asked the world in general. Sasuke gave a disdainful sniff, so cool. But otherwise didn't say anything. Sakura sighed dreamily. Naruto scrunched his face up and nodded. If he's gonna be 3 hours late every day, I'm not gonna wait for him here doing nothing. And with that he leapt up so that he was crouched on the bridge railing and pushed himself into a handstand. Sakura gaped at him, firstly because he was perfectly balanced on his hands, body held up in a perfectly straight line. Secondly, because in that brief moment of effort, hoisting himself up and pushing so that his arms were straight, previously unnoticed muscles had bulged out and almost made Sakura drool before she remembered who she was looking at. She determinedly ignored inner Sakura, who was shouting about stupid, ugly, misleading orange jumpsuits, conveniently forgetting that Naruto had stripped out of said jumpsuit yesterday afternoon after Kakashi-sensei threw him in the stream. What are you doing, Naruto? Sakura asked him. He gave her an upside-down grin from his place atop the railing. I'm practicing. I've been trying to figure out how to improve my balance on my hands for ages. He paused sheepishly as she wondered why he needed to improve. He looked in perfect form to her. I never even thought of using a railing. Dumb of me, I could have just used the stair rail at home. And with that he started slowly moving one hand in front of the other, walking along the rail on his hands. Sakura had to admit to being a bit jealous. It looked really cool from where she was standing, and those arms. She stopped herself before those thoughts spiraled out of control. Remember Sasuke-kun, the love of your life? With the perfect face and voice and hair. Sakura snuck a look at the dark-haired boy. During her conversation with Naruto, he'd moved to the center of the bridge and sat down, calmly meditating. So cool. And definitely more attractive, no matter how, Wonderfully muscled the blonde's arms were. Sasuke barely suppressed a growl when, 3 hours after he'd told them to meet up, Kakashi arrived at the bridge, hentai book out and eyes smiling like he'd done nothing wrong. "You're late," Naruto and Sakura both screamed. Kakashi raised a hand to his mask, humming a little. "Am I? I had to stop and help an old woman carry her shopping home." Sasuke frowned skeptically. Even Naruto and Sakura were exchanging looks. As if they could read each other's minds, they both pointed a finger at the Jonin accusingly. "You're lying." Kakashi simply continued, eyes smiling, as if he'd done nothing wrong by leaving them to wait for a whole 3 hours. Bastard. How was he supposed to get strong enough to kill that man if his Jonin sensei was a habitually late, lazy bastard who was always reading porn? "Ma, calm down kids. I was thinking maybe we'd do some training and then a mission, but how about we do the mission first, huh?" Sasuke decided right then and there that those eye smiles were going to give him a conniption one day. It was odd how much one face could convey when 3/4 of it was covered. And all Sasuke could see in that uncovered quarter was amusement. He hated being laughed at, as though he wasn't worth taking seriously. Obviously, he didn't voice any of this. He did, however, send an extra poisonous glare Kakashi's way before he stood up. "A mission? Already? Awesome," Naruto yelled, jumping up from his spot on the railing. He'd given up on the hand walking after a whole hour of practice, and where the hell did he learn how to do that anyway? That wasn't something they taught at the academy, and instead he chose to hang off the railing with his legs for half an hour, before pulling himself up and laying across the railing on his back. Sasuke didn't know if he'd been sleeping or what, but honestly he was unnerved by the lack of shouting from the blonde. He'd always been a rather loud presence at the academy. He'd toned down the attention-seeking behavior after about a year and was simply an extremely rambunctious prankster, but he'd still always been noticeable. Even when Sasuke was newly back at the academy after that night, he couldn't help but notice the blonde boy. He was annoying and an idiot, but he'd never given Sasuke any pitying looks or anything, which Sasuke appreciated. "Gigi." With surprise, Sasuke realized that they'd reached the Hokage Tower already, and the Hokage himself was sitting behind the mission desk that was usually manned by Chunin. And that Naruto had just called the most powerful ninja in the village, Gigi. "Stupid Dobi." "Naruto," Sakura screeched. "Be respectful to Hokage-sama." Sarutobi simply chuckled. "It's quite alright, Sakura-chan. Naruto-kun is irrepressible. In any case, I suppose you're here for a mission?" He peered questioningly at the 3 genin. "You bet Gigi." "Ma, Naruto-kun, calm down." Sasuke had to smirk at the sulky pout on Naruto's face. "Idiot. Team 7 requests 1D rank mission please, Hokage-sama." Kakashi drawled lazily. "A D rank him?" "Well," he said, digging a small scroll out from the pile. "I think this one is a good choice for a first mission." Sarutobi handed the scroll over to Kakashi, who scanned it quickly before passing it on to Sakura with one of those stupid eye smiles. Sasuke and Naruto quickly gathered around Sakura to read the scroll with her. Sasuke couldn't deny feeling a little excited, his first mission as an official shinobi of Konohagakure. That lasted until he read what was written on the scroll. "Grocery shopping? What the hell is this Gigi? Kakashi-sensei?" Somehow, the smirks on both Kakashi's and the Hokage's faces didn't make Sasuke feel any better. Naruto scowled at his smiling sensei. That bastard. Tricking them like that, and Gigi too. Naruto just knew he was going to hate D ranks. They were now back at the training ground, after doing that crazy old woman's stupid grocery shopping. She'd taken one look at him and instantly gone all cowly and shit. It had taken Kakashi-sensei's calm talking and Sakura-chan's cute little girl politeness to get her to pull the stick out of her ass and give them the damned shopping list. Bah, stupid woman, stupid fox. At least now he knew why most of the village hated him. Even if he thought they were dumb to treat him like shit, what if he really was the Kyuubi and let loose one day? Wouldn't it have made more sense to not make the gigantic Yoko mad at you? He couldn't blame them. The Kyuubi took so much from this village in one night, they had a right to be angry. It sucked that they chose him to be their scapegoat, but he could handle it. He'd show them all one day. Uzumaki Naruto never backed down, and he always kept his promises. He would become Hokage and look after his village if he had to die doing it. Naruto. Sakura's fist smashing into his head broke his completely awesome internal monologue. Rubbing the top of his head, Naruto thought she might have broken something else as well. The girl was crazy strong. Have you been listening at all? Kakashi-sensei has another mission for us. It's not more shopping, is it? Naruto asked warily. The silver-haired shinobi chuckled lightly. No, Naruto-kun, nothing like that. This is a mission you'll be doing for me. You can think of it as training if you'd like. That sounded suspicious to Naruto, but if his sensei said to do it, he'd have to do it. Of course, if it was something dumb, Kakashi would be feeling Naruto's wrath later. The four of them sat in a circle in the middle of the training ground's large grassy area, Naruto sitting between Kakashi and Sasuke, with Sakura-chan opposite him. Do you remember how I told you that Konoha values teamwork? The three genin nodded. Kakashi continued. I thought that you three might need to get to know each other a bit more, before you will be able to work effectively together. How are we going to do that, Kakashi-sensei? Sakura asked, eyes wide. Naruto guessed she was probably jumping inside at the chance to get to know Sasuke-kun better. Their sensei's lone gray eye curved upwards in a smile. To put it simply, you three will be stalking each other. What? Naruto and Sakura screamed simultaneously. Even Sasuke let out an emphatic, HN. Eyeing Kakashi's much too cheerful face, Naruto decided his sensei was nuts. What the hell was that supposed to mean, they'd be stalking each other? That sounded like a really creepy way of getting to know someone. Why couldn't they just go out for food and ask retarded questions like normal people? Anyo, Kakashi-sensei, the pinkette spoke up nervously. What exactly do you mean? I meant what I said, Sakura-chan. You three are going to take turns having your teammates follow you everywhere for 24 hours, observing you and your habits, routines, etc. This way, you can all get an idea of how each other works and also what kind of people you all are. I will also be observing you all at the same time. That is really creepy, Kakashi-sensei. Naruto deadpanned. So we all gotta follow each other home, and sleep there and shower there and everything? Sounds about right. Kakashi shrugged. I have to ask though, do any of you have the same basic routine on weekends as you do on weekdays? Or is one of you going to have to wait until Monday? We'll be having team training on Saturday afternoons too, if that helps. Naruto shook his head. His weekend routine was almost the exact opposite of his weekday routine. Mine is similar enough. Sasuke's stupid monotone answered Kakashi-sensei. I can go on Saturday. Thank you Sasuke-kun. That makes things easier. Okay, I'm going to send you three on your way in a minute. You need to pack for at least 2 days away from home. Sakura-chan, since you'll be going first, you just need to inform your parents that your team will be staying with you for the night. Sakura-chan smiled and shook her head. That's not necessary, Kakashi-sensei. Both my parents will be out on missions for the next few days. We'll have the house to ourselves. Naruto squinted as he thought. Was that alright? Sakura-chan being all alone in a house with 3 guys? It wasn't like they would try anything, but still. Would her parents mind? Would she get in trouble when they got home? If they, as shinobi, let their daughter become a kunoichi, they obviously knew that Sakura-chan would eventually have to be alone with her cell at night. Kakashi Hmed, his thoughts unknowingly mirroring Naruto's. He wasn't exactly the most responsible person in Konoha, but even he knew it wouldn't be appropriate for a 12-year-old to spend the night alone with 3, relatively, unknown males. It was different for shinobi of course, but as they'd only been a team for 1 day, he thought there should probably be some sort of supervision. The problem was, he wasn't on good enough terms with any kunoichi, any female really, to ask them to have a sleepover with a notorious pervert and 3 children. Ah well, one problem at a time. Sakura-chan, will your parents mind you having people over while they aren't around? Her little pink head tipped to the side and thought. No, I don't think they'll mind, especially if it's my genin team. Anyo, sensei, Naruto broke in. He really didn't think he'd be comfortable, at least this early on, with Sakura-chan being by herself with 3 stronger guys. She had a wicked punch, but still. It just didn't feel right in his mind. Yes, Naruto-kun? Kakashi smiled kindly at the blonde boy. Anyo, do you think I could ask one of my Ni-chans to stay with us? At Sakura-chan's, I mean. I dunno if they'd like me staying the night at a girl's house. No need to offend Sakura-chan by suggesting she was too delicate or some shit. Kakashi smiled to himself. He was really starting to like that kid. It's up to Sakura-chan, but I have no problems with it, Naruto-kun. The three males looked Sakura's way. She blushed a little at the sudden attention, but considered Naruto's request. She wasn't stupid, she understood the real reason he'd asked, but she was far from offended. In fact, Sakura thought it was rather sweet that he cared about her honor like that. And really, her parents would probably prefer it if she had another, older, female in the house. Sakura nodded, smiling brightly. Sure thing, Naruto. Well, Kakashi clapped his hands. Now that that's settled, you three go get ready for your mission, and then come back here. Sakura-chan's 24 hours will start as soon as team training does. Sakura glared daggers at Kakashi-sensei from where she had collapsed against one of the large trees surrounding the large grassy training field. It was a different training ground than the one from yesterday, but it was pretty similar. There was a large grassy field, just without the memorial or the wooden posts. Trees framed the field on three sides, and a river cut across the fourth side, with more forest visible opposite the water. Actually, Sakura was sure that the river completely encircled the training ground. They'd had to cross the little red bridge to get in, and they'd walked through the forest to get to the field. It was like Training Ground 7 was a little island, with only one way off. But anyway, Kakashi-sensei. He didn't look like he was dying in painful agony from the power of her glare alone, but like inner Sakura said, they'd get him eventually. All afternoon he'd made them run laps around the training field, stopping only when they literally couldn't force themselves to run anymore. He said it was to test their stamina or endurance or something. Sakura thought he just enjoyed watching them suffer. Even worse, now she was all sweaty and yuck in front of Sasuke-kun. She'd been forced to stop running much sooner than the boys had, but she had enjoyed the chance to watch Sasuke-kun working out without having to hide. It was a shame he hadn't taken his shirt off like Naruto. Sakura continued to ignore inner Sakura's rant about ugly orange jumpsuits that hid arms and abs from the world. But since Sasuke-kun would be showering at her house shortly, she dealt with the disappointment. That thought was the only thing that kept her going when Kakashi-sensei made them do multiple reps of sit-ups, push-ups, and a heap of other exercises. Imagining Sasuke-kun staying the night in her home, even if Naruto, his Nichan, and Kakashi-sensei were there too, had distracted her enough that she'd lasted longer during the reps than she usually would have. Now, at just past 4 in the afternoon, Sakura was exhausted and in desperate need of a shower. That's all for today, my cute little genin. Kakashi-sensei announced. We can move out as soon as Sakura-chan thinks she's ready. Oh Kami, no, please. She didn't think she could walk just yet. She considered crawling home, then decided that would make her look too undignified in front of Sasuke-kun. Ooh, maybe Sasuke-kun would be a perfect gentleman and carry her home. Sakura glanced hopefully up at him through her eyelashes. No go. He wasn't even looking at her. How disappointing. Anyo-sa, Sakura-chan? Could we get going soon? It's just, Megumi-ne's probably waiting by now, and she does weird things when she gets bored. Naruto's blue eyes gazed at her apologetically. She hoisted a smile onto her face. She didn't want to keep this Megumi waiting. First impressions and all. And, Sakura brightened up. The sooner she got home, the sooner she could get all this dirt and sweat off of her. And she could see after shower Sasuke-kun. Sakura jumped to her feet, suddenly energized by thoughts of Sasuke-kun walking around her house dripping wet, in only a towel. We can go right now. Where's your Nichan waiting, Naruto? Well I just told her to meet us at the bridge from this morning. Sakura nodded. Sensible, since they walked across it to get in and out of the training ground. This way, they wouldn't have to deviate from Sakura's normal routine. The new Team 7 meandered slowly back to the bridge, all but Kakashi-sensei too worn out to pick up any real speed. Even Naruto, who had far outlasted both herself and Sasuke-kun, was far too exhausted to be his normal boisterous self. Sakura was honestly very impressed with the blonde's stamina. She also thought it was cute how Sasuke-kun's last few laps had been his way of trying to keep up with Naruto, and how he glared every time Naruto ran past them collapsed under the tree. She could almost feel Sasuke-kun's determination to beat their blonde teammate. And he absolutely would. Sakura had unwavering faith in Sasuke-kun's ability. All of a sudden, Sakura felt Naruto perk up next to her, and he was running. Where did that energy come from? for the bridge and the tall womanly silhouette standing there. She sighed. That baka. Wasn't he supposed to be following her? Kakashi nearly choked when he and his less enthusiastic genin came closer to their Energizer Bunny teammate. The image of Naruto holding onto a tall woman with long red hair was almost enough to make his heart give out. He could almost imagine Kushina Nisan was here to pick up her baby boy after his first day of official genin training, beaming down at him as he babbled at her about his day. And then they reached the duo, and the fantasy faded. It shouldn't have surprised him, the sharp stab of hurt Kakashi felt when he caught a glimpse of laughing gray eyes and a pointed little nose instead of violet fire set in a round face. He couldn't shake the sense of wrongness is wrong. This woman was not Kushina Ne, nobody could be her, nobody else could be Naruto's mother. None of these thoughts showed on his face. Kakashi-sensei, Sakura-chan, Sasuke. This, Naruto grabbed a hold of the woman's hand. This is my Ni-chan. The redhead, darker than Kushina Ne's, not burning brightly fire, laughed. You need to work on your introductions, Naruto-kun. Hello, she smiled brightly at the Jonin and his two genin. I'm Nakamura Megumi. It's nice to meet you. Kakashi nodded politely, glancing at his other students from the corner of his eye. These next few days were about observation after all. Now was a good time to see how they reacted to new people. Sakura was gazing at Megumi, awe and a hint of jealousy in her eyes. It wasn't hard to guess why. Naruto's older sister figure was beautiful and graceful looking, even standing still. Kakashi thought she was probably a dancer of some sort. She wasn't a kunoichi and most civilians couldn't pull off that kind of grace. And he could see the toned muscle of her arms and legs, exposed by the knee-length white sundress she was wearing. However, the jealousy didn't keep his female student from smiling back and politely introducing herself. Sorry, Megumi Ne. Naruto laughed sheepishly, hand raised to the back of his head. This is my team. That's Kakashi-sensei, Hitaki Kakashi. And they're Haruno Sakura, we're going to her house, and Uchiha Sasuke. Introductions all accompanied by rude finger pointing. They set off again, following Sakura through the bustling streets of Konoha. Kakashi was at the back of the pack, Icha out and lone eye sweeping periodically over his little charges. Naruto was chattering away to Megumi, occasionally trying to draw his teammates into the discussion. Sakura was clearly exhausted however, and was focusing on finding her way home. Sasuke too, was too tired, and, Kakashi suspected, shy, to put in even his usual minimal effort social interaction. They eventually reached a nice two-story home on the outskirts of one of Konoha's shopping districts. Kakashi looked around as Sakura led them inside, noting the light-colored hardwood floors, white trim, and warm taupe walls. It was obviously the home of a shinobi family, with lots of space to maneuver, comfortable yet sensible furniture that could be used for defense or offense, minimal valuables in sight and no photographs to give away any weak spots. Those would likely be in the bedrooms or put away in albums. He watched in amusement as his male genin had an intense glaring match to settle who would be first to use the shower. Sakura would use her parents' ensuite, which became moot point when the little pinkette whacked Naruto across the head, proclaiming that, of course Sasuke-kun can have the first shower. She was evidently well raised, playing the good little hostess, managing to work a tour of the house in while she was finding towels for the boys, getting tea for the adults and making sure they were comfortable before going off to have her own shower. Kakashi wasn't sure where her bipolar attitude came from, or her intense fangirling, because her house was giving off the impression of a nice, normal, well-adjusted family. Maybe it was time for a little, underneath, investigating. For now though, he'd been left with a not-so-hyperactive Naruto and a not Kushina older sister, who were both seated at Sakura's kitchen table, staring intently at each other. Kakashi, who was leaning against the kitchen bench calmly sipping his tea, had no idea what they were doing. It was none of his business anyway. He pulled out his precious Icha and settled in to read. Much to Sakura's disappointment, she missed seeing after-shower Sasuke-kun, due to the fact that she was enjoying her own shower too much to even think about getting out early. Although, there would be no stopping her next time, Shanaru. She giggled a little at the thought of seeing after-shower Sasuke-kun at his own home. Besides, it wasn't like she completely missed out. His hair had still been wet and out of his usual style. It was all flat and hanging over his face, when she finally got back to the kitchen, and he looked so cute. Especially combined with his navy blue sweatpants and black shirt. Sakura giggled again, thinking of Sasuke-kun in his sleepwear. She herself hadn't put her PJs on. They were pink and embarrassing, but she was wearing black leggings and a cute thigh-length red shirt, and hopefully Sasuke-kun would notice. She was just waiting for Naruto to get out of the shower, and then she'd start dinner. It would have been her night to cook anyway, if her parents were home, so that worked out well. Now that training was over and she felt like a human being again, Sakura was feeling a little bit awkward. The whole stalking each other exercise was making her paranoid. Naruto and Sasuke-kun would probably only find out generic things about her, but Kakashi-sensei was a jonin. Who knew what kinds of observations he would make during her 24 hours? 24 hours was a long time in ninja time. It was a little awkward outside her mind as well. Kakashi-sensei was leaning back against her kitchen bench, little orange book in hand and a faint blush on the visible part of his face. Sasuke-kun and Megumi were sitting at opposite ends of her 6-person kitchen table, one staring intently at the other while they carefully avoided looking back. Sakura tried not to scowl at the older woman. What was she doing, staring at Sasuke-kun like that? But she was finding it difficult. It was bad enough that Naruto's Nichan was absolutely beautiful, tall and graceful, with the slim type of body that didn't make you look flat, instead emphasizing your curves. Sakura prayed to Kami that her body would mature soon. Ino Pig was already beating her in that and it was unacceptable. Megumi had lovely long dark red hair that reached her lower back, and what looked like bangs that were currently clipped back atop her head, with a milky white complexion that was similar to Sakura's own. Her slanted gray eyes were warm and inviting, dancing with mischief and good humor. If Sakura didn't know any better, she would have said that Megumi really was Naruto's big sister based off the looks in their eyes alone. Sakura thought the older woman's face was perfect, angular without being too sharp, and a perfectly proportioned forehead, unlike her own. She self-consciously raised her hand to her hairline, making sure that her bangs and hide-8 were in place. She debated for a good 10 minutes whether to wear her hide-8 after she got out of the shower, but in the end, wearing her ninja gear in a civilian outfit wasn't weird enough to justify exposing her forehead to her team and the beautiful Megumi. Besides, she was a ninja now, wearing her hide-8 was expected. And Sasuke-kun had put his back on too. But Megumi was getting more attention from Sasuke-kun in 10 minutes than Sakura had gotten in all their years at the academy together. Even if that attention was him pointedly not giving her attention. It showed how very aware of the older woman the dark-haired boy was. Sakura didn't have to wait too long to find out why Megumi was staring at her future husband, because the woman chose that moment to speak up. "You've seen me at work, haven't you?" The question, abrupt as it was, startled Sakura and Sasuke both, and even Kakashi-sensei looked up from his book curiously. Sakura had no idea what she was talking about, but one glance at Sasuke-kun showed that he did. His pale cheeks held a faint blush, and he seemed to be gazing at the point of Megumi's nose instead of her eyes. Not that Sakura wanted him to be looking any girl's eyes but her own. "You have, haven't you?" Megumi sounded delighted. "Ah, you're so cute. There's no need to be embarrassed. What were you doing in there anyway?" Sakura watched Sasuke-kun's blush darken, without his permission, if the scowl on his face was any indication, and silently amazed at the power of the woman. Nobody had ever got this type of reaction from the Uchiha before. It was so cut. He was usually so cool and handsome looking, with his stoic, serious face, but blushing, shy Sasuke-kun was just adorable. Megumi clucked. "Just curiosity then? You probably didn't get too far, if remembering me can still make you blush." She winked. Sakura was utterly confused. What could Sasuke-kun have seen her doing that would embarrass him just from watching? What kind of job did Naruto's Nichan have, exactly? Apparently Kakashi-sensei knew, or had an idea, because he was staring wide-eyed at the redhead. Sakura pouted a bit. She was feeling very left out. Luckily, Naruto bounded back into her kitchen at that point, disappointingly back in his old orange jumpsuit pants and a black t-shirt. His usually wild blonde spikes were even wilder from what had probably been a rough towel drying, and Sakura had to stifle a laugh. He looked like a shaggy blonde puppy. "So what do we do now, Sakura-chan?" he asked cheerfully. She raised a hand to her jaw, tapping it thoughtfully. Well, I'm going to start making dinner. You guys can sit in here and watch me, or you could go hang out in the living room until I'm done. Sasuke was debating the merits of adding another person to his to-kill list. That man deserved to die for the horrendous act he had committed. But Kakashi-sensei, well, he made Sasuke do things that made him feel uncomfortable and off balance, which in turn distracted him from thoughts of training and becoming strong enough to complete his mission. He glanced upwards yet again at the red-headed woman chatting with Sakura and Naruto. She was seated at the opposite end of the table, with Naruto to her right and Sakura working in the kitchen at her back, though she was turned so that she could speak with both of them. At first, Sasuke had thought he was mistaken. After all, what were the chances he'd run into one of those women outside of that place? Still, he'd avoided looking directly at her in the hope that he wouldn't recognize her, and to avoid embarrassing himself. That had flown right out the window when she spoke before, and made him blush. In front of Sakura, Sasuke shuddered. He'd recognized that internally squealing face Sakura had been making. Somehow though, Hitaki knowing exactly where it was that Sasuke had seen Megumi was worse than Sakura's fangirl worship increasing. Sasuke swore he could feel the amusement emanating off of the one-eyed bastard from where he leaned against the wall behind him. It was very hard holding onto his anger and hate and focus, when all he wanted to do was sink into the ground and stay there, where nobody could see him blush. So yes, Hitaki Kakashi would be added to his list, right under the name of that man. Honestly, Sasuke wasn't very interested in the purpose of this mission training exercise. He had no desire to get to know his teammates better. Bonds would only hold him back in his mission, and tempt him into following that man's lead in order to gain power. No, better to remain distant. Not like he would have had much interest even without those reasons. Sakura was an annoyance, a pink-haired, desperate, stalkerish fangirl. He'd had her figured out from the moment they were told that their female teammate would be going first. She had living shinobi parents of unknown rank, who were often out on missions if the thought of being home alone didn't faze her. Sasuke wasn't sure why she was so useless if both her parents were ninja, unless they mistakenly thought she would sort herself out. He scoffed inwardly. Yeah right, she was unused to hardship or hard work. She was a privileged, sheltered little girl who didn't belong in the shinobi life. If her biggest worry was what Sasuke thought of her, then she wasn't worth his time. She was boring and useless, and Sasuke would rather be anywhere but her house right now. Especially when Nakamura Megumi was also in it. Sasuke watched discreetly as his blonde teammate enthusiastically questioned Sakura about her parents, her home, her life. He wasn't entirely sure if Naruto was taking the stupid mission seriously, or if he was genuinely curious. Probably both, he decided. Uzumaki was an orphan also, so he had no idea what normal family life was like, even if he had picked up several siblings along the way. Sasuke privately thought that if all Naruto's Nichans were like this one, he still didn't know what normal family life was like. Dinner's ready. Sakura sang out, carrying a large dish out of the kitchen. She placed it carefully on the center of the table and returned to the kitchen, presumably to get the rest of the food. Sasuke peered subtly at the dish on the table. Chicken stir-fry. He'd half expected the girl would make them all eat lettuce. Kami knew that was all she appeared to eat. TCH. Why was she even a kunoichi again? Sakura held back a sigh of relief as Naruto finally sat back, patting his stomach in satisfaction. She had made extra food of course, with 4 guests in the house, but she hadn't made that much, and Naruto had demolished most of it. How embarrassing would it have been if she couldn't keep her guests satisfied? Then again, green eyes narrowed at the laughing blonde. How was she supposed to have known that Naruto ate like he was never going to eat again? With the way he ate, Sakura was surprised he was able to bounce everywhere the way he did, instead of rolling. Maybe he'd just been extra hungry tonight because of the exercise they'd done that afternoon? Kami only knew Sakura had eaten more than she'd intended to. That would have to change. Now that she knew how hungry being active made her, she'd be able to control herself. She cast her eyes over the other people sitting at the table, pleased to see that they all looked to have enjoyed her cooking. Kakashi-sensei had finished eating first, clearing his plate and pulling his mask back into place before Sakura could get a good look at his face. Disappointing, but there would be other chances. Megumi, now she had been a surprise. Her body was so beautifully slender. Sakura had been certain the older woman kept to a strict diet, not so. Her first helping had been piled high with stir-fry and mashed potato, while her second helping had been more normal-sized. That had done nothing to help Sakura's envy of Naruto's Nichan. How could she be so slim and perfect when she ate like that? Today must be her cheat day, Sakura decided. There was no way she could maintain that figure if she was constantly eating such large portions. And of course, Sasuke-kun. She'd been nearly trembling with anticipation when the raven-haired boy took his first mouthful. What if he hated it? What if he decided she wouldn't make a good wife because he didn't like her cooking? The thought nearly made her pass out. But he had no visible reaction. He'd simply chewed and swallowed, systematically clearing his plate. Sakura chose to take that as a good sign. Inner Sakura was cheering right throughout dinner, helped along by the sidelong glances that Sakura sent Sasuke's way every few seconds, entranced by her love eating the food she'd prepared for him. Such a satisfying feeling. Now that dinner was over, Sakura could feel the awkwardness coming back. Her team was here to see how she lived and stuff like that, so what did she usually do after dinner? Whoever cooked didn't have to do the dishes, but she couldn't make her guests do it. What could the others do while she was doing domestic things? Anyo, Kakashi-sensei? So embarrassing, having to ask. He blinked his one eye at her lazily. What is it, Sakura-chan? She fidgeted shyly in her chair, twirling a lock of pink hair around her finger. Well, I was just wondering what you guys wanted to do now. I need to do that dishes, and I don't want you to be bored. Sakura gazed earnestly at the Jonin, who smiled a little behind his mask. She was just too cute. He hummed thoughtfully. I know, Naruto-kun, Sasuke-kun. The two boys looked up from their conversation, intense brooding. Kakashi continued cheerily. You two are going to help Sakura-chan with the dishes, okay? Megumi-san and I will, supervise. Eyes smiled at them as Megumi giggled. Sakura cheered a little internally. She really hated doing the dishes alone, it was so boring. And it wasn't rude this way, because she hadn't asked her guests to help with the housework, their Jonin-sensei had ordered them. Loopholes were beautiful things. The genin quickly worked out a system to get the job done, with Sakura washing, Naruto drying, and Sasuke-kun putting away. Sakura couldn't deny feeling a warm glow in her chest, seeing the three of them working together, and she was indirectly working with Sasuke-kun. Even if it was something as small as doing the dishes. She'd feared that their earlier D rank had set the standard for all Team 7's interactions, but that clearly wasn't the case. Okay, maybe she was exaggerating, but the grocery shopping had been a little more stressful than she'd expected. Firstly, getting the list from the client had been a mission in itself. She'd really seemed to have a grudge against Naruto. Sakura assumed the blonde had previously targeted her with a prank or something. Secondly, the list asked for some really specific items, which neither Naruto nor Sasuke-kun seemed to have the patience to find, leaving Sakura to do it as they otherwise would have just grabbed something that was close enough. And thirdly, the two boys seemed to feel the need to turn everything into a competition between them. It was kind of cute, but mostly it was annoying, because then Sasuke-kun got mad and that was bad, and the whole thing just made everything more difficult. Sakura also couldn't deny that their little rivalry made her feel a little left out. Bad enough that Sasuke-kun paid more attention to the dobi, she internally apologized to the blonde, than to her. But Naruto was always so friendly to everybody and even he paid her no attention when he was caught up with Sasuke-kun. So it was nice to know that they could all work together like this. When they'd finished, Sakura led them all into her living room and switched the TV on. At Naruto's excited inquiries and Kakashi-sensei's raised eyebrow, she shrugged. Usually after dinner I go outside and practice throwing kunai and shuriken with Tucson, and when he's not here I relax and read or talk with Kasen. When neither of them are here, I either do my homework, relax and watch movies, or go next door and visit Rina-san. She's a nurse at the hospital, she used to babysit me when I was little. Sakura admitted bashfully. She quickly changed the subject away from her sitter with the embarrassing baby stories, in case anybody got any ideas of visiting. So what are we going to watch? They eventually settled on an animated kids movie, appropriately funny for Naruto and cute for the two girls. Kakashi-sensei and Sasuke-kun didn't have a preference. At first Sakura had been wary of watching such a movie in front of Sasuke-kun. What if he found her childish? But in the end she'd been won over by Naruto and Megumi's infectious enthusiasm. Sakura settled giddily back into the sofa, comfortably in between Sasuke-kun and Naruto, where Kakashi-sensei had directed them. She subtly shifted closer to her dark-haired teammate, close enough that she could smell the familiar soap scent on him. Sakura slowly drifted off, breathing in the scent of home, and feeling inexplicably safe sandwiched between her two teammates. When Naruto woke up the next morning, it was to find himself squashed back in the corner of the sofa, with a peacefully sleeping pink cat resting her head on his calves. He gulped. Carefully raising his head, Naruto saw that Sasuke was mirroring his position, curled up in the opposite sofa corner, and Sakura-chan was curled up between them, entwined with their legs. Oh god. Oh god, oh god, oh god, oh god, oh god. What if she woke up? What if Sasuke woke up? Oh hell, what if Megumi-ne saw? Speaking of, where was Megumi-ne? And Kakashi-sensei? Why hadn't those traitors woken them up last night so that they wouldn't end up in an awkward situation exactly like this one? Fuck. Naruto lay there, panicking silently for a few minutes, before deciding to just risk the wrath of Haruno Sakura, and quickly slid a cushion under her head whilst simultaneously reclaiming his leg. He breathed a sigh of relief when the movement didn't wake either of the others. Quietly, the blonde boy tiptoed his way through the doorway to the dining room, kitchen, thinking maybe he could cook up one of the ramen cups he'd stashed there last night. Hey, who said he couldn't be stealthy? Freezing when he saw his sister and his sensei both sitting at the table, staring at him with identical raised eyebrows. Well shit, guess they'd already been snapped. G-morning sensei, Nichan. Naruto said awkwardly, shuffling past them to get to his precious ramen. Megumi giggled. Did you have a good sleep, Naruto-kun? Naruto groaned, face palming. He turned to face the adults, ramen cup in hand and a pained expression on his face. I don't suppose you're just asking out of general politeness, are you? His evil, sadistic sister smirked back at him. You're shit outta luck, Ototo. I'm asking, because you three cuties looked mighty comfortable from where I was standing. Naruto drooped as Kakashi snorted lightly. Of course they'd seen. How could they have missed the puppy pile of genin all twisted around each other on Sakura-chan's sofa? Hopefully neither of them had taken pictures, but with his luck, that was more of a desperate prayer than a hope. He was about to reply to Megumi's question when another though struck him. Hey, do you reckon I should wake the Teme up before Sakura-chan realizes where she's sleeping? He's defenseless in there right now. Who knew what she would do if she woke up all cuddled up with the object of her, affection? If she'd woken up with Naruto, she would have screamed his ears off and probably whacked him one. He winced at the thought. Geez, anybody who made the mistake of thinking she looked like a sweet and delicate little thing would get the surprise of their life when she suddenly went bam. And knocked their block off. Naruto cackled at the picture that thought had spawned. Sweet Kami, Team 7 would be the strongest genin team in Konoha. No, all of the shinobi villages, once they got a little training in. They had Uchiha Sasuke, Bastard Extraordinaire and Rookie of the Year. That title had to count for something, right? Haruno Sakura, the deceptively physical powerhouse, and Uzumaki Naruto, who was made of pure awesomeness. Team 7 would be kick-ass. Even if they did have a lazy perv of a sensei. Naruto, being the nice person that he was, tiptoed back into the living room, after he put the hot water in his ramen of course. The teme wasn't important enough to rank above ramen, and silently made his way over to the sleeping Uchiha. Glancing nervously at the sleeping Kunoichi, Naruto decided against anything that would jar Sasuke awake and also wake Sakura-chan. He poked the other boy's arm, causing a small frown to flicker across the pale visage. A wicked smile danced across the whiskered face. If only he had a camera. Sleeping Sasuke was so cute, perfect blackmail material. What would his fangirls do for a picture of their darling in their most vulnerable state? What would Sasuke do to ensure they never got it? Naruto sighed regretfully, internally promising himself that next time he wouldn't let the opportunity go to waste, and jabbed Sasuke's shoulder, hard. Dark eyes flew wide open and Naruto hurriedly placed a finger against Sasuke's mouth. He slid his eyes sideways to where Sakura-chan was still peacefully sleeping, legs entangled with the Uchihas. Black orbs followed azure ones and widened dramatically. Naruto was pissing himself laughing inside his head at the horrified look on that pale face. It wasn't so bad for him, He was just embarrassed that his sister and sensei had seen him snuggling with his team like a frickin' puppy. But Sasuke. Naruto once again had to hold in a laugh. Uchiha Sasuke was a loner emo bastard, and he'd spent the night cuddled up with one of his biggest fans. It was pure gold. He let his mouth widen in a smirk, and removed his finger from Sasuke's mouth, which immediately twisted into a scowl. "Hey, typical. Did you need some help there, Sasuke-kun?" Naruto asked innocently. He gleefully noted the humiliated fury burning in the older boy's eyes. "Good. Get him off of that high horse for a little bit. Dobi, get her off of me." Naruto was honestly very impressed with the amount of fury and menace that the dark-haired genin managed to fit into that one tiny whisper. That he simultaneously fit a little pleading in there too was just amazing. He considered leaving Sasuke there. He'd done his part, warned Sasuke of his predicament, and now he could deal with it himself. But the open plea on Sasuke's face did away with that thought. If the Uchiha was lowering himself enough to basically ask for help, Naruto would work on getting him to actually ask later, then he should get a reward. Naruto held up a hand, silently asking Sasuke to hold still and be quiet. He zeroed in on the tangle of limbs that were Sasuke and Sakura's legs, trying to figure out how to sort it out without waking Sakura-chan. He felt mischief tugging at him as he remembered doing something similar with his brats. Carefully stretching a hand towards Sakura-chan's exposed feet, ignoring Sasuke's frantic, "What the fuck are you doing?" face, he lightly traced the tip of his fingernail over the arch of one pale foot. It twitched. He did it again. The kunoichi muttered and drew her legs up higher towards herself. Eyeing her closely to make sure she wasn't waking up, Naruto did it one more time. The pink-haired girl made an annoyed huffing noise and curled right up, entangling her legs from Sasuke's and leaving the Uchiha free to escape. Naruto grinned triumphantly and stuck his tongue out at the hilariously relieved boy. He got a dark glare in return, like that would faze him. "Huh, yeah right." Naruto just rolled his eyes and made his way back into the kitchen, where his ramen was calling to him. "Hell yeah, right on 3 minutes, dat bayo." It wasn't until Sakura-chan had woken up about an hour later. Naruto buried his face in his arms to hide his laughter when Sasuke shifted away from the obliviously confused girl. That he thought to ask, "Anyo-sa, Kakashi-sensei? When are we gonna go do missions or training or something?" Sakura-chan and Sasuke, who were sitting on either side of him at the table, also waited expectantly for the answer. The one-eyed Jonin looked up from his conversation with Megumi-ne, and Naruto would totally kick his ass if he started getting any ideas about his Nichan. Well, as it's about 8 now, I guess you three can go wait for me at the bridge while I walk Megumi-san home." Megumi grinned when Naruto pointed a finger at his sensei. "Don't go getting any ideas, Ero-sensei." Kakashi gaped as the blonde turned to Megumi. "And no flirting, Nichan. Punch him in the balls if he tries it on." With that said, Naruto nodded decisively, grabbed his gear that was waiting at his feet, and strolled casually out the door. The rest of Team 7 gaped while Megumi amusedly shook her head. "Alright then, Naruto-kun. You too," she added to the stunned genin. "Had better go catch up with him before he gets too far. I'll see you tonight." She smiled brightly. They did as she said, waving goodbye to the red-headed woman as they left. As it turned out, Naruto had only wandered a few meters, apparently waiting for his team to catch up. The three of them slowly meandered their way through the village to the little red bridge in silence. Until Naruto broke it. "Anyo-sa, Sakura-chan? Yes? It's still your 24 hours, right?" "Yep. Yours will start at about 12 this afternoon. So that means we're still supposed to be observing you?" "Anyo, I guess so." Naruto grinned. "You should take the lead on our mission then, so that me and the Teme can observe your leadership and all that stuff." He watched her pale green eyes widen with shock and uncertainty. She nervously bit her lip and glanced up at the bastard through her eyelashes. Naruto HMED internally. If they were gonna be a kick-ass team, Sakura-chan would have to be broken of her Sasuke hero worship. And he would have to be the one to do it, because, well, the other two were clearly going to be no help. So that was one more thing to add to the list, which currently only consisted of, teach Sasuke to not be an asshole. He, discreetly, elbowed the taller boy in the side when he didn't say anything in reply to Sakura-chan's questioning look. Sasuke let out a grunt, which Naruto took to mean, "Don't fucking touch me, you loser." But Sakura-chan took as approval of Naruto's suggestion. Man, for someone who claimed to be in love with the bastard, she really didn't understand him at all. Naruto smiled encouragingly at the pink-haired girl, who smiled nervously back. He knew she had it in her to be a great kunoichi. He knew from her determination not to give up on Sasuke, her strength and cleverness in getting through the academy, her growth after Ino showed her how to stand up for herself. Naruto had learned a lot about his kunoichi teammate the night before. He'd asked her a lot of questions, out of honest curiosity, which she'd been happy to answer. Naruto may not know everything about her, but he did know that Haruno's Sakura had a lot of potential. And Uzumaki Naruto would help her to reach it. That was a promise, Datbeo. Sakura couldn't help but let a wide, proud smile cross her face as she surveyed Team 7's hard work. Naruto had relayed their plan to Kakashi-sensei when the lazy Cyclops finally reappeared, 3 hours later, and he'd been more than happy to let Sakura take charge. She'd been so nervous at first. Neither Naruto nor Sasuke-kun were easy people to direct. But Naruto had been friendly and supportive, easily accepting her orders and encouraging her when she was unsure. What Sakura had really been nervous about was directing Sasuke-kun. What if he ignored her? What if he thought she was being bossy? What if he resented her for being the first to try being in charge? Thankfully, her fears were unfounded. The raven-haired boy had been his usual stoic, silent self. Kakashi-sensei had been as completely unhelpful as the previous day, standing by, reading his little orange book under the guise of supervising. Their second D-rank mission had been to split logs, which, as an always available commodity in Hai no Kuni, had already been prepared and ready, and deliver them to one of the old folks' homes in Konoha for use as firewood. They were to fill up the garden shed out the back that was used for exactly this purpose, and also fill the baskets placed by every fireplace inside the home. Sakura had decided to have Sasuke-kun do the actual log splitting. She thought the boys had about equal upper arm strength, but Naruto had more stamina, and so would be the better choice to have running back and forth, ferrying the split logs from Sasuke to Sakura. She herself organized the split logs inside the shed from the pile Naruto had dumped them in, and also filled the baskets inside. All helped along with copious use of Naruto's cage bunchen, of course. And now the woodshed was full, stacks of logs neatly organized and in place. All because of the efforts of Team 7. Once she'd gotten into the swing of things, it had been quite enjoyable being in charge of the boys. It was easier once she no longer had Sasuke-kun in her sight. It was a shame that she couldn't watch him swing that axe. Even the thought made her drool. But the knowing looks that Naruto kept giving her made her blush so badly, and made her want to prove to him, to both of them really, that she could do this. So she'd separated herself from Sasuke-kun. And to be completely honest, the proud smile that she received from the blonde boy had more than made up for not being able to watch Sasuke-kun. Now that they were on a team together, she had plenty of time to see the dark-haired Uchiha, Shanaru. But to be acknowledged, for someone who wasn't her parents or her sensei to be proud of her. Sakura felt her insides warm pleasantly, and absently wondered if she was glowing on the outside as well. She didn't really have any real friends. Ino had been her only one, and even now that they were rivals, the Yamanaka still held a lot of Sakura's attention at the academy. So even while Uzumaki Naruto was a loud, semi-annoying little shit, he was friendly and genuine and completely real. Sakura basked in his quiet but sincere pride. It was a good feeling. Suddenly she was looking forward to a whole 24 hours dedicated to getting to know Naruto better. Sakura had a feeling it would be a day full of revelations. Naruto narrowed his eyes until only a tiny slit of blue could be seen. Kakashi-sensei had sunshined away with a cheery, "Ya-ne," and instructions to meet him at Training Ground 7 after they'd reported mission success at the mission desk, and now here he was, reading his stupid hentai and giggling disturbingly. He exchanged glances with an equally irritated Sasuke. If looks could kill, their sensei would be a goner. Naruto stomped right up to Kakashi-sensei, invading his personal space, and frowned heavily up at the silver-haired Cyclops. He didn't say anything, just stood there and let his radiating aura of disapproval speak for him. Golden eyebrows were furrowed over narrowed blue eyes and tanned arms were crossed over his armored vest. Naruto took note of his own stance as he stared at his sensei and giggled to himself. He felt like Masora Nichan about to give a lecture. What's wrong, Naruto-kun? Kakashi's eye crinkled up as he smiled down at his youngest student, whose foot had started tapping in annoyance. Sasuke scoffed before Naruto could answer. Can we just get on with it? Naruto uncrossed his arms and flung one dramatically at his sensei. Don't be ahead, sensei. You won't like what I'll be forced to do if you are. With that said, the blonde rejoined his teammates in line. Kakashi shook his head, utterly bemused. He figured that would be a common state when dealing with the offspring of Uzumaki Kushina. The boy had caught him off guard with his ridiculous statements at least 3 times in the last 2 days. Alright then, I'm sure you'll be glad to know that we won't be repeating yesterday's physical training. Naruto's mouth quirked up at the corners when Sakura-chan's relieved sigh interrupted Kakashi-sensei's little speech. Her fair skin flushed bright red when she took notice of Kakashi-sensei's amused gray eye and Sasuke's minutely raised eyebrow. Taking pity on her, Naruto bounced up and down on the balls of his feet, loudly asking, Anyo-sa, so what are we gonna do instead, sensei? He winked briefly at the grateful glance Sakura shot him. Today we will be doing chakra exercises. Kakashi-sensei announced, like it was some kind of treat. Unfortunately, Naruto just knew that the sadistic bastard was trying to play them. His new sensei had not made a good impression at all, what with him trying to get it on with his Nichan. So, Naruto definitely had the guy's number. He knew exactly what kind of exhausting torture Hitaki Kakashi had planned for them. Okay, maybe not exactly, but he knew there was some kind of horrifically tiring activity coming their way, and damn it, he had work tonight. The thought caused a faint red flush to rise in his tanned cheeks, catching the attention of his Jonin sensei. Seriously, what the fuck? The man had one eye for fuck's sake. Why did he always notice every single little thing? And earning him a curious look. Naruto simply widened his eyes in a, what did I do? Expression. Not like he could tell the man that he was imagining their reactions to his other job. Not that Naruto was ashamed of what he did, hell no. It was honest, hard work, and it was fun as well. There were certain parts that Naruto was a little embarrassed about how much he enjoyed. But that could wait. Right here, right now, he had chakra torture to beat. No sadistic asshole sensei was gonna get the best of Uzumaki Naruto. Kakashi had to admit, he was impressed with his little cell. They might have the most ridiculous range of skill and abilities ever seen in any genin cell in all the elemental nations, but they made it work. It was also highly convenient for him, because the differences meant he had extra time to plan whatever the hell he was gonna do with his little ducklings while they all caught up to speed with one another. Why Sandaime-sama insisted he was capable of teaching, Kakashi would never know. All afternoon he'd had them working their chakra in different ways. From manifesting it outside their bodies for as long as they could possibly hold it, demonstrating their chakra control using the academy method with the leaves, and several, interesting, variations of the leaf method. Kakashi's poor, naive little ducklings. They thought they would be getting a respite from their physical exhaustion yesterday. Little did they know, working their chakra could be just as, if not more, tiring as physical exercise. Of course, Kakashi wasn't stupid or cruel. He was probably the worst choice for Jonin sensei, but he wasn't a complete idiot. There had been plenty of breaks and junk food for the genin in between exercises. Not that someone, Naruto, needed them. It was mind-boggling that a 12-year-old could have such a monstrous amount of chakra at their disposal. On the other hand, Kakashi's little kunoichi in training had next to nothing, compared to her 2 teammates. At least her control was superb, so all Kakashi needed to do for her, chakra-wise, was force her to use it and build up her reserves. Sasuke, well, he would be easy. His reserves were pretty big for a new genin, so it was just a matter of control. All Kakashi had to do was show him how to do it and mention how critical chakra control was for any shinobi. Sasuke's pride would do the rest. But Naruto, who could spam Kage Bunshin like they were nothing and yet couldn't create a single illusionary Bunshin. Naruto who could stick lines of leaves to his hands and feet, the most difficult places to channel chakra, but was unable to stick one solitary leaf to his forehead, where it was easiest. Yeah, Konoha's copy Nin had no idea what he was going to do with that particular duckling. His youngest genin just had far too much chakra to effectively control. Said genin interrupted Kakashi's internal musing with a loud, "Hey Kakashi-sensei," accompanied by wild hand waving in front of Kakashi's one visible eye. "Yes, Naruto-kun?" Kakashi answered, trying not to show much the little blonde brat had just deafened him. Apparently, Naruto knew though, because he had a hand on the back of his head and his cheeks scrunched up in a sheepish grin. "Anyo, sorry sensei. But it's my turn no, and I usually got stuff to do at 4:10 and it's 4:05 already, so I was just wondering if we could get going now? 'Cause you said we were done training for the day, right?" The boy sounded a little cautious, as though he were expecting Kakashi to suddenly change his mind just because it was Naruto who had asked. Of course, the young Jinchuriki probably had reason to believe that that was possible. His stuff was likely more important than he was making it sound, if he was willing to risk asking. Curious, what could be so important for a baby genin? Obviously, Kakashi didn't let his curiosity show. He simply curved his eye up in a smile and gestured for Naruto to lead the way. Wherever the Jonin was expecting his student to lead them, a civilian primary school was certainly not it. It was one of the smaller schools, a little run down, and closer to the poorer districts of Konoha, but somehow a little more cheerful than the few Kakashi had seen elsewhere. He had no more time to muse on the differences in child education centers, because a little boy with vivid orange hair was in the process of jumping on his youngest student. Kakashi was a little put out that his little charge apparently had a charge of his own. Naruto was a child, he had no business knowing how to take care of other children, not when Kakashi himself had no clue how to do it. It was completely unacceptable. Kakashi would not be outclassed by his genin so quickly. They were supposed to grow to that point, not start out there. "Guys," Naruto said as he returned the boy to the ground and took hold of his hand. "This is my middle ototo, Akiyama Ken. He's 5. Ken-chan, these guys are my team. That's Kakashi-sensei, Sakura-chan, and Sasuke-teme." He pointed at each of them as he spoke, and they in turn nodded their heads in greeting. The little boy just grinned impishly back, and was that a little bit of Naruto that Kakashi could see, in the way Ken's chubby 5-year-old cheeks scrunched up to make his eyes squinty? What an absolutely terrifying thought, his bottle green eyes shining happily. So, Kakashi had been wondering, ever since introductions on the first day, what Naruto had been talking about when he said, his brats. Evidently the little blonde meant it in the same way as Kakashi did. A gaggle. Kakashi thought that was a hilarious word and he appreciated every opportunity that he got to use it, of children that were his responsibility to look after. Strange as that was, the biggest prankster child in the village had been trusted with caring for smaller children. Which meant little Ken, and the other brats, probably belonged to Naruto's mysterious sisters. Exactly how big of a family had Sensei's son built for himself, Kakashi wondered. And why had it taken so long for him to notice? Ah well, time for guilt and recriminations later. Kakashi always had time for those. Right now, he was supposed to be stalking his most sunshiny student. The group of 5 traipsed off down the street, Naruto and Ken chatting away while Sakura listened curiously and Sasuke did his little brooding thing. Kakashi really had to figure out what he was going to do with that one, before the little duckling did something he would regret. They had barely been walking for 5 minutes when Naruto halted them once again, this time in front of a kindergarten. Great. The spawn of Uzumaki Kushina had influence over the minds of itty-bitty babies. Just what Konoha needed. Kakashi waited outside the gate with his older 2 students while Naruto and Ken walked inside, watching as little Sakura-chan gazed adoringly at the Uchiha. That was going to get annoying real quick. Amusing as it may be, it was not good kunoichi behavior. He would probably have to do something about that too, which meant effort. No wonder he had never passed a genin team before. Before 5 minutes had passed, in relatively awkward silence that Kakashi couldn't help sniggering at internally, Naruto and Ken had emerged once more, this time with 3 tiny additions. The blonde boy drew to a stop in front of his teammates, a little girl who couldn't be more than 2 in his arms, and 2 more toddlers, and boy and a girl, walking in between himself and Ken, hands carefully entwined. Kakashi had to admit to being, once more, taken off guard by his youngest genin. The 5 of them made such an adorable sight, like a little family. Naruto bounced the little girl in his arms, shifting so that she could see his teammates. Kakashi caught a glimpse of large gray eyes behind fluffy black bangs before she turned away, hiding her face in Naruto's neck. The boy grinned. "Hey, she's shy. Guys, this here is Nomura Satomi. She's just turned 2, the youngest of my brats." Sakura had hearts in her eyes, Kakashi noted amusedly. Girls never could resist a guy who was good with kids, Icha said so. And this? Naruto lightly shook the hand holding on to that of a little brown-haired boy who was smiling cheekily up at the older kids. "Is Sakino Kaimu, my youngest Ototo?" That would mean there was another brat somewhere, Kakashi noted absently. He'd said that Ken was his middle Ototo. Kaimu-chan's holding hands with Akiyama Akari, Ken-chan's little sister. "She's 3, same as Kaimu-chan." Kakashi would have known that even without Naruto telling them. Akari had the same bright orange hair and bottle green eyes as her brother. Except on her, the distinctive features looked innocent instead of impish. "Brats, these guys are my new genin team." He proceeded to introduce them all once again. Kaimu and Akari both smiled brightly at the shinobi, waving their little hands in greeting. Kakashi smiled down at them, fighting the urge to ruffle their fluffy hair. That would probably be creepy of him, and Naruto would give him another look. Kushina Ne would have been so proud, she'd had the exact same one. Now that Naruto had apparently finished collecting his charges, the group of 8, and God, Kakashi felt old, traveling with a horde of children, set off once again, slower now to allow for the 3-year-olds. Even still, it took only a little under 10 minutes to reach their final destination, a large, somewhat rundown apartment building in the residential district just before you hit Konohazakasen. Kakashi knew for sure that this was where Naruto lived, the Sandaime having shown it to him on the morning of team placements. "Home sweet home," Naruto declared with good cheer, nuzzling gently into Satomi's fluffy hair. Kakashi smirked behind his mask when he heard Sakura's aborted squeal. The pinkette got herself under control admirably, following Naruto and the kids up the stairs. "Do all you live in this building?" she questioned curiously. For once, the copy nin was glad to see. She wasn't glancing around to look at Sasuke every 2 seconds. Instead, her grass-green eyes were soft, focused on the adorable toddlers making their way upstairs even while she listened intently to Naruto's explanation of their living arrangements. The Uchiha, Kakashi noticed, was also watching the children with an unfathomable look on his face. He wondered if Sasuke was remembering the young ones of his clan, who had also been slain during the massacre. It was a sobering thought. Naruto felt warm. There wasn't any other way to explain it. His heart felt light and there was something like sunshine rushing through his veins. He was surrounded by his brats and his team, and Sakura-chan was asking questions and actually seemed interested in the answers, and shit, it was making Naruto stupidly happy. He wondered if that meant Sakura-chan was willing to be friends now. That would be nice. After dropping all the kiddies off with their respective parents, by himself, he had plans for when his teammates met everybody else. Naruto finally got his team into his own apartment. It was nothing great, but it was clean, and it was his, and it was nothing to be ashamed of. Unlike Sakura-chan, he only had the one shower though, so he offered it to her first like the gentleman he was. Her grateful smile was blinding. He had definitely earned some points there, and set Kakashi-sensei and Sasuke up with some snacks while they were waiting. Once the 3 of them were all squeaky clean and smelling good, Naruto heated up the omurice that Masora Ne-chan had left for him and passed it out. "Okay." He clapped his hands, grinning broadly. "I know it's early, but there is a reason we're eating now. I've actually got a job. Don't worry, sensei, this is my last shift, since I'm a ninja now. And I usually have dinner and get in a quick nap before I've gotta go. So, come on guys, eat up." Naruto dug into his own meal, ignoring his teammates' confused looks and Kakashi's raised eyebrow. They would get to know soon enough. Sasuke had a bad feeling about whatever they would be doing tonight. Naruto had been extremely evasive during their early dinner, and then promptly crashed out on one of the 3 futons on his small bedroom floor. Sakura was asleep next to him. The Dobi had offered her his bed, but Sasuke had seen the way she was looking at him. To avoid a repeat of the previous night, he had taken the futon on Naruto's opposite side, and Kakashi was laying back on the bed, Icha over his face. He had no idea if the Jonin was actually sleeping or not, but it didn't matter to Sasuke. He was too preoccupied with thoughts of what Naruto's other job could possibly be. Sasuke wasn't blind, nor was he stupid. He knew that Naruto had a bad reputation in the village, and most places wouldn't even serve him. So, who would even bother to hire him? On another note, why did the Dobi even need a job? Orphans got a stipend from the village, until they either came of age, became genin, completed their schooling, or got a job, whichever came first. Naruto would have only just received his final payment in the last few days. What did a child who lived alone need extra money for? These thoughts circled around in Sasuke's head, niggling at his brain until he fell asleep. What felt like only minutes later, his eyes were opening again, blearily focusing on the grinning face above him. Dobi? The blonde nodded, Sasuke's vision finally clearing up enough to notice that something was a little off about his teammate. He blinked. Why do you look like that? Naruto sat back, pouting as Sasuke struggled into a sitting position. That's mean, Sasuke-kun. What a thing to ask a lady. There was the sound of muffled choking in the doorway. Natsumi-chan, I don't think he meant it like that. Sasuke was really wondering if he was still asleep. Surely this bizarre situation was only a product of his subconscious. Reaching out, he jabbed Naruto, Natsumi, in the stomach. Hard. Eep. She doubled over, clutching at the soft flesh that Sasuke knew for a fact did not belong on his teammate's body. Long blonde tresses fell forward, obscuring the much too feminine face, with its scar-less cheeks and round jaw. What was that for? She whined, sounding simultaneously both more and less like Naruto. What is going on here? Sakura, still watching from the door, was the one to answer his demand. It's her job, Sasuke-kun. She's a serving girl at Akahana. That explained a little less than nothing. Apparently realizing that Sasuke had no idea what that was supposed to mean, Sakura hurried to elaborate. It's a club, Sasuke-kun. In the Akasan. They're one of the most popular clubs in Konoha. Natsumi nodded eagerly, blonde hair flying. I'm just getting into character. So much about that explanation still made zero sense to Sasuke. His biggest problem, however. Dobi, you're 12. Although, now that Sasuke was looking properly, she didn't look 12. Her form was a little different to the one that Naruto usually took for his stupid Oiroke no Jutsu. Older around the face, and less obnoxious around the bust and hips. The hair was darker too, less buttercup yellow and more of a dark gold. To Sasuke, Natsumi was still obviously Naruto. But he supposed that to anybody who hadn't met the Dobi, she was a totally different person. In response to Sasuke's statement, Natsumi lifted her wrists, indicating the soft leather cuffs she was wearing. Black means nobody's allowed to touch me. Red ones mean the workers are open to a little petting. That wasn't what Sasuke was thinking about. But it also opened up a whole new line of issues. And don't worry, Natsumi went on without waiting for an answer. You'll all be getting black ones as well. My bosses already know that you're coming. She smiled, as though she'd just said anything at all helpful. Wait, Dobi, Sasuke growled. Are you trying to tell me that we're all going to be working with you? Akahana. That was probably the place where he'd seen that Nakamura woman. In the red light district. Sakura had said it before, but it was only just now sinking in. What the hell kind of life did Naruto have, that he was working as a girl in one of the village's most popular clubs in the Akasan? And speaking of, do we have to build a henge like yours? Sasuke's voice absolutely did not crack. Oh sure. Natsumi replied blithely, waving a hand. It's super easy. I've already got a few ideas, I can help you all out. Kakashi, who must have been in the kitchen, leaned into the room, peering over Sakura's head. Oh, Sasuke-kun, you're awake. You should get up and have something else to eat before we go. Natsumi-chan says we'll need the energy. Their Jonin-sensei seemed remarkably blasé for someone who was about to go do who knows what in the Akasan with his team of 12-year-olds. Sasuke glared at the man as he got to his feet, ignoring the way Natsumi had latched onto Sakura. I have the perfect look in mind for you, Sakura-chan. Do you want me to show you? He made his way out to Naruto's small kitchen, but he only managed a few bites to eat, too distracted by the heaping pile of questions he suddenly had about his teammate's life. When Natsumi and Sakura finally appeared again, Sakura no longer looked like herself. She was taller and more filled out, appearing to be around the same age as Natsumi. Her hair was also lilac. Ooh, well done Natsumi-chan. Kakashi gave the two girls a thumbs up. Very cute. Does Sakura-chan have another name she'd like us to use? Sakura smiled shyly. We decided on Sake. Short and easy to remember. Her blue eyes flickered toward Sasuke. He ignored her hopeful expression, focusing instead on the mischievously expectant one that Natsumi was aiming at him. That look did not bode well for him. Sasuke made a pretty girl. Natsumi danced around her temporarily female teammate, hands fluttering over the perfected henge. They hadn't done much. Natsumi thought Sasuke might kill her if she tried to insist on something dramatically different, but even so, just the softer facial features made Sasuke look like so much less of a bastard. Longer hair, a fluffy fringe, and eyes that had been lightened to dark brown instead of black completed the disguise. Like this, as long as he held on to his usual blank expression instead of outright scowling, he could probably be taken as the shy type. Alright, Natsumi clapped her hands, grinning broadly. And now for the name. Sasuke blinked. Do I have to? Natsumi stamped her foot. Sasuke-kun, you're the only person with that name in the whole village. Probably. Don't me. Do you want to pick your own name or not? Not really. Blinking, taken a little aback by the honesty, Natsumi dropped the arms that she had crossed over her chest. Really? Should I do it, then? I make it as close to my name as possible, Dobi. Sasuke said, looking pained. Not something stupid. Well, that was easy. Satsuki-chan, Natsumi said cheerfully. Your name is Satsuki-chan. Since her teammate didn't appear to hate it, Natsumi sent her back out to try and finish her plate from before. She was definitely going to need the energy tonight, no matter how generally athletic she was. If the work made Natsumi tired, there was no way Sake-chan and Satsuki-chan weren't gonna be exhausted by the end of it. Kakashi-sensei, she sing-songed. It's your turn, Tilda. The Jonin poked his head through the door, eyes smiling genially. Even me, Natsumi-chan? She pouted at him. You're not gonna observe us as yourself, are you, sensei? That's no fun. It wouldn't be too weird for Kakashi to do so. Akahana was pretty popular among shinobi, enough that Natsumi knew a lot of the Jonin, Chunin, and Tokuho forces on site. Assuming Kakashi knew how to act casual, he could totally get away with hanging out at Akahana for a night. But that was boring. Well, I was planning on it, actually. Kakashi stepped fully into the room and patted her on the head. I don't want to be distracted from seeing what my cute little genin get up to, do I? Sensei, are you trying to say that you're just gonna ignore us for the Akahana girls? Under Natsumi's dubious squint, Kakashi just chuckled. Ma, Natsumi-chan, you three are going to be Akahana girls. If I don't want to draw unnecessary attention to you all, I may need to spread my own around somewhat. For the mission, you understand. Yeah, Natsumi understood. Understood that her sensei was a giant pervert. She was gonna keep a super close eye on him tonight, Datbeo. Sakura no, Sake, she mentally corrected herself. Tonight, she was Sake-chan. Sake couldn't recall ever being so nervous. The Akasan was scary. Oh sure, it looked nice, at least towards the front. But she had heard stories about the sorts of things that went on in the depths of this place, and she was sure that she never wanted to see them with her own eyes. She wondered if Naruto, Natsumi, ever had. Luckily, Akahana was situated closer to the middle than the back, and it didn't take the three girls long to reach the club. Natsumi took them in through the back, and Sake, well, she was trying not to look, to be honest. She kept her eyes trained on the back of Natsumi's golden head, only vaguely aware of the dark wooden walls and warm lighting that formed Akahana's staff-only area. They passed by several groups of people on their way through, and Natsumi greeted them all, voice warm and bright. Their replies were a far cry from any that Naruto would have received from the general Konoha populace. It only made Sake all the more curious, wondering what her teammate could possibly have done to earn so much animosity. These ponderings distracted her enough that by the time Natsumi came to a stop, a good portion of Saki's tension had melted away without her even noticing. She looked around, realizing that Natsumi had led Satsuki and herself into a small dressing room. These are usually reserved for the show girls, Natsumi explained, dumping an armful of black cloth onto the vanity. But for tonight, they're letting us use one, since you two need the mirror for your henges. As Natsumi unfolded her bundle, Sake saw that it was a pair of black short shorts, a black halter bodysuit, and black thigh-high sock boots. She gulped. The three of them had made the walk from Natsumi's apartment in basic leggings and tunics, that Natsumi had also helped them to henge into. It had lulled Sake into a sense of false security. While not the most scandalous outfit she had ever seen, the environment she would be wearing it in made her want to fidget out of her skin. Dobi, Satsuki-chan was eyeing Natsumi with an odd look on her face. Again, we're all 12. The blonde girl waved her hands, utterly unconcerned. It's fine, Satsuki-chan, I promise. The customers are good about following the armband system, and even if someone tries it, you're allowed to protect yourself. The bosses care about us, okay? Our safety is priority one. She blinked big blue eyes earnestly at them. Sake wasn't entirely sure that was what Satsuki-chan was getting at, but it was good to know all the same. Seemingly satisfied with the silence her answer had brought, Natsumi unconcernedly began stripping. Sake and Satsuki-chan both squeaked in surprise. Satsuki-chan's was very cute. Sake was going to remember it forever, and clapped their hands over their eyes. While Satsuki-chan berated their teammate, Sake found herself wondering about the blonde girl all over again. The henge was an illusion. The easiest, most basic genjutsu there was. It was a shell. It was not, should not have been solid. And yet Natsumi was. She didn't seem to realize that there was something fundamentally different about her henge compared to everybody else's. When she realized that Sake and Satsuki-chan couldn't physically change their clothes the way she could, her only reaction had been a cheeky grin and I guess you guys just aren't as awesome as I am. However, back at the Shinobi Academy, Naruto's clones, the second easiest genjutsu in existence, were abysmal. They always came out looking like pale, on the verge of death versions of the person he was imitating. That had started making sense once they started their genin training, and Kakashi-sensei explained that Naruto naturally had a lot of chakra and next to no control. He literally was not capable of manipulating the teeny tiny amounts of chakra that basic Bunshin used. Sake wondered if that somehow had something to do with it. Maybe Naruto overloaded his henge with so much chakra that it became more than a simple illusion? But if that was a thing that could happen, surely it would have been at least mentioned at the academy? Nay, Sake-chan, do you need me to help again? Sake jumped. Natsumi was standing very close to her, clad in her uniform. She smiled when she noticed Sake was looking at her. You all right there? Yes, fine, Sake replied, giving herself a mental shake. She'd never thought so hard about her teammate before tonight. It could wait a little while longer. I think I've got the hang of it now. Scrutinizing the all-black outfit, Sake drew in a deep breath. As she slowly let it out, her eyes drifted closed and she tugged on her chakra, molding it to the image held in her mind. Once she felt the new version of her henge click into place, Sake opened her eyes again, and found herself face to face with a stranger. Icy blue eyes blinked at her. Silvery lilac hair fell in a curtain around a heart-shaped face, with a reasonably sized forehead, just brushing slender shoulders. The stranger twisted, eyes dropping to long legs encased in black faux swayed up to mid-thigh. Sake swallowed. The stranger did too. Ready? Natsumi bounced on the balls of her feet, face alight with excitement. Sharing a glance with Satsuki, that sent butterflies swooping through her stomach for another reason entirely, Sake took comfort in the fact that at least she wasn't the only one whose answer was no. Still, meeting Natsumi's shining eyes, Sake quirked a smile. Ready?
That's all for now. If you enjoy this video, then please like, share and do comments.